The diner's neon sign flickered against the dusk, casting a pink glow over the gravel lot where Ellie wiped down the counter, her apron stained with coffee and dreams. The bell above the door jangled, and a man stumbled in, his flannel shirt torn, his face shadowed by a worn baseball cap. He looked like he'd walked straight out of a storm, and Ellie's heart, always too soft for its own good, tugged at the sight. "You okay, mister?" she called, her voice warm but wary. The man, Jack, though she didn't know it yet, glanced up, his gray eyes sharp despite the dirt smudged on his cheek. "Just need a coffee," he muttered, sliding onto a stool. But his hands trembled, and Ellie noticed the way he kept glancing out the window, like he was expecting trouble to follow him in. Outside, the small town of Willow Creek hummed with the quiet rhythm of a Friday evening. Pickup trucks rumbled down Main Street, and the annual Harvest Fair's lights twinkled in the distance, a celebration of family and hard work that drew everyone together. Ellie, at 32, had served pie at that fair since she was a kid, her laughter a fixture as much as the Ferris wheel. But tonight, her smile faltered as she poured Jack's coffee, her fingers brushing a crumpled $5 bill in her pocket, her last until payday. Rent was due, and her brother's medical bills loomed like a storm cloud. Still, she slid a slice of apple pie toward Jack. "On the house," she said, ignoring the pang in her chest. "You look like you could use it." Jack's eyes flickered with something, surprise, maybe guilt, and he nodded, his voice low. "Thanks. Don't get kindness like that often." He took a bite, and for a moment, the tension in his shoulders eased. But then headlights swept across the diner's windows, and Jack stiffened, his hand slipping to his pocket. Ellie followed his gaze to a black SUV idling across the street, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. "Friends of yours?" she asked, half joking, but her pulse quickened. "Nobody's friend," Jack said, his tone clipped. He stood, tossing a crumpled bill on the counter, too crisp for a man who looked like he'd been sleeping in his truck. "Keep the change." He was halfway to the door when Ellie called after him, her curiosity outweighing her caution. "Hey, you forgot your pie." She held up the plate, but Jack was already at the door, his silhouette framed against the neon glow. He turned, and for a split second, his eyes softened, like he was seeing her for the first time. "Keep it," he said. "Maybe I'll be back for it." Then he was gone, slipping into the shadows of a lot just as the SUV's engine roared to life and peeled away. Ellie frowned, her fingers tracing the bill he'd left. It was a 50, far too much for coffee and pie. She tucked it into her apron, her mind racing. Who was this guy? Why was he running? And why did that SUV feel like bad news? She shook her head, telling herself it was just a long shift playing tricks on her. But as she locked up the diner an hour later, the night air felt heavier, the crickets too quiet. She glanced down the empty road, half expecting to see Jack's silhouette, but there was only darkness. The next morning, Willow Creek buzzed with Harvest Fair preparations. Banners hung across Main Street, and the scent of caramel apples drifted from the fairgrounds. Ellie, still rattled from the night before, helped set up the community pie booth, a tradition her late parents had started. Her brother, Tommy, sat in his wheelchair nearby, his laughter bright despite the oxygen tank at his side. "You're gonna burn those pies, sis," he teased, and Ellie swatted him with a dish towel, her smile masking the worry gnawing at her. The $50 bill was tucked in her wallet now, a small lifeline she hadn't decided how to use. As she arranged pies, a shadow fell over the table. Jack stood there, cleaner now, his flannel swapped for a plain gray jacket, but his eyes still carried that guarded edge. "Morning," he said, his voice softer than before. "Figured I'd owe you for that pie." Ellie blinked, caught off guard by his return. Up close, he was older than she'd thought, maybe late 40s, with lines around his eyes that spoke of hard years. His hands, calloused like a mechanic's, fiddled with a keychain shaped like a tiny wrench, an odd detail for a drifter. "You didn't have to come back," Ellie said, but her cheeks warmed as she handed him a slice of pie. "Most folks don't." Jack's lips twitched, almost a smile, and he leaned against the booth, his gaze lingering on her. "Most folks don't give their last bucks to a stranger," he said, his tone light but probing. Ellie froze, her breath catching. How'd he know? She'd never said a word about her money troubles. Not to him or anyone. Before she could ask, a shout rang out from the fairgrounds. A truck had backfired, sending kids scattering. Jack's hand shot to his pocket again, and Ellie caught a glint of something metallic before he relaxed, his jaw tight. "You're jumpy for a guy eating pie," she said, trying to keep things light, but her stomach twisted. Jack's laugh was low, more reflex than humor. "Old habits," he said, but his eyes darted to the crowd, scanning for something or someone. Ellie followed his gaze, spotting a man in a leather jacket lingering near the Ferris wheel, his posture too stiff for a fairgoer. Her gut told her he was watching them, and the memory of that SUV flashed back. "Okay, level with me," Ellie said, lowering her voice. "You in some kind of trouble? 'Cause I don't need it following me home." Jack's expression flickered, guilt, maybe, or hesitation, and he rubbed the back of his neck, the wrench keychain glinting in the sunlight. "No trouble," he lied, and Ellie knew it instantly. His voice was too smooth, his eyes too evasive. "Just passing through. Thought I'd repay a kindness." He slid a folded envelope across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "For the pie, and maybe for trusting a stranger." Ellie opened the envelope later, behind the booth, her hands trembling. Inside was $100 in cash and a note. "Keep being you, Jay." Her heart raced, torn between gratitude and suspicion. Nobody gave money like this, not without wanting something. And yet, Jack was already gone, vanished into the fair's crowd like he'd never been there. She tucked the envelope away, her mind spinning with questions. What was he hiding? And why did she feel like she'd just stepped into something bigger than herself? That night, Ellie walked home along the rural road bordering Willow Creek, the fair's lights fading behind her. Tommy was with their neighbor, Mrs. Carter, a retired nurse who'd been like family since their parents passed. The road was quiet, the air thick with the scent of pine and earth. Ellie's sneakers crunched on gravel, her thoughts on Jack's note, when headlights pierced the darkness. She turned, expecting a neighbor's truck, but it was that black SUV, slowing as it approached. Her pulse spiked, and she quickened her pace, clutching her phone and the envelope in her pocket. The SUV rolled closer, and a window cracked open. "Hey, sweetheart," a voice called, rough and mocking. "Need a ride?" Ellie's heart pounded, but she kept walking, her eyes scanning the road. The SUV inched along, and a man leaned out, his face shadowed. "Come on, don't be shy. We just want to talk." Ellie's hand tightened around the envelope, Jack's cash heavy in her pocket. She didn't know why they were following her, but her gut screamed danger. She broke into a run, her breath ragged, as the SUV's engine growled. The road stretched dark and empty ahead, and for the first time, Ellie wished Jack hadn't left, because whoever he was, he'd known trouble was coming. The SUV surged forward, gravel spraying, and Ellie dove into the ditch, her hands scraping earth. Headlights blinded her, and a door slammed. Footsteps crunched closer, and a shadow loomed over her, a glint of metal in the man's hand. "You're going to tell us where he is," the man growled, his voice low and dangerous. "Or you're coming with us." Ellie's breath caught in her throat as the man's shadow loomed over the ditch, the glint of his knife catching the SUV's headlights. Her fingers dug into the damp earth, clutching the envelope Jack had given her, its weight a reminder of the stranger who'd brought this trouble to her doorstep. "I don't know who you're talking about," she shouted, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. The man crouched, his leather jacket creaking, his face half-lit, scarred, with eyes that held no warmth. "Don't play dumb," he growled. "The guy with the cash. Where's he hiding?" Before Ellie could answer, a sharp crack split the air. A rock, hurled from the darkness, struck the man's shoulder. He staggered, cursing, and Ellie seized the moment, scrambling to her feet. A figure emerged from the shadows, Jack, his jaw set, another rock in his hand. "Back off, Ray," he said, his voice low but commanding, like he'd faced men like this before. The man, Ray, snarled but hesitated, glancing at the SUV where another figure waited. Jack stepped closer, positioning himself between Ellie and Ray, his stance protective but tense. "She's got nothing to do with this." Ray's laugh was cold. She's got everything to do with it now. He lunged, but Jack was faster, grabbing Ray's wrist and twisting until the knife dropped. The SUV's engine roared, and Ray yanked free, sprinting back to the vehicle. Tires screeched as it sped off, leaving dust and silence in its wake. Ellie's legs shook, her eyes locked on Jack, who stood panting, his hands clenched like he was fighting an urge to chase them. "You okay?" Jack asked, turning to her, his gray eyes searching her face. Ellie nodded, but anger surged past her fear. "What the hell was that?" she demanded, shoving the envelope at him. "Who are you? And don't give me that just passing through crap." Jack's mouth opened, then closed, his hesitation infuriating her further. He'd saved her, sure, but he'd also lied, and now she was running from knives in the dark. "Not here," Jack said, glancing down the road. "We need to move." He offered a hand, but Ellie ignored it, brushing dirt from her jeans. "Fine," she said, her voice sharp, "but you're explaining. Now." Jack nodded, his expression a mix of guilt and resolve, and led her toward a narrow path through the pines, away from the road. The night air was thick with the scent of sap, and the distant hum of Willow Creek's harvest fair felt like another world. They reached an abandoned sawmill, its rusted machinery looming like ghosts under the moonlight. The mill, a relic of the town's logging days, was a place kids dared each other to explore, but tonight it felt like a fortress. Jack pushed open a creaking door, revealing a dusty interior lit by slivers of moonlight. Ellie followed, her sneakers scuffing the floor, her mind racing. Inside, Jack leaned against a rotting beam, his hands in his pockets, the wrench keychain glinting faintly. "All right," he said. "You deserve answers." Ellie crossed her arms. "Start with why those guys are after you, and why they think I know you." Jack sighed, rubbing the back of his neck, his guarded demeanor cracking. "Those men work for a guy named Victor Crane," he said. Let's say, he's not a fan of mine. Thinks I owe him something. They must have seen you with me at the fair, figured you're someone I care about." His eyes met hers, and Ellie's stomach flipped, not just from fear, but from the way he said it, like he meant it. "You care about me?" she snapped, deflecting the warmth in her chest. "You don't even know me." Jack's lips twitched, that almost smile again, but faded fast. "I know you gave me your last $5, he said. "I know you're working yourself to the bone for your brother." "That's enough." Ellie flinched, her face heating. How'd he know so much? She wanted to press him, but the memory of Ray's knife kept her focused. "So, what's Crane's deal?" she asked. Jack hesitated, then spoke carefully. "He's a businessman. Greedy. Dangerous. I crossed him a while back, and he doesn't forgive easy." His tone was vague, and Ellie sensed he was holding back. She stepped closer, her voice firm. "That's not enough. You dragged me into this, Jack. Tell me the truth." Jack's jaw tightened, and for a moment, she thought he'd shut down. But then he spoke, his voice quieter. "I used to work for him. Not proud of it. I walked away, and he didn't take kindly to it. That's all you need to know for now." Ellie's frustration flared. He was still dodging, but before she could argue, he added, "I didn't mean for you to get caught up. That was my mistake." "Your mistake." Ellie scoffed. "You lied about being in trouble, and now I'm dodging knives. You don't get to brush this off." Jack's eyes darkened, and he straightened, his voice sharp. "I'm trying to fix it, all right? I didn't ask you to play hero with your last dollar." The words stung, and Ellie's chest tightened. He was right. She'd acted on impulse, same as always, but his deflection only made her angrier. "Fine," she said, turning toward the door. "Fix it yourself." But Jack grabbed her arm, his grip gentle but firm. "Ellie, wait. They're still out there. You go back now, they'll find you." His voice softened, and she saw something new in his eyes. Fear, not for himself, but for her. It stopped her cold, and for a moment, they stood there, the air between them charged with unspoken questions. Reluctantly, Ellie nodded, and they sat on a crate, the mill's silence pressing in. Jack pulled a thermos from his jacket, coffee still warm, and offered her some, a small gesture that felt oddly intimate. "You always carry coffee?" she asked, her tone lighter despite herself. Jack chuckled, the sound easing the tension. Old habit. Keeps me sharp. He sipped, then added, my dad was a mechanic. Used to say coffee and a good wrench could fix anything. Ellie smiled, picturing it. My dad was the same. Always tinkering in the garage, teaching Tommy and me. She paused, her voice catching. Tommy's all I've got now. If anything happens to me, she trailed off, the weight of her brother's bills and her own choices crashing down. Jack's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through her. You're not alone in this, he said, his voice steady. I'll make sure you get back to him. Ellie wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered. Who was he, really? And why did his promises feel so genuine? Their moment was shattered by a crash outside. Glass breaking, then footsteps. Jack sprang up, pulling Ellie behind a stack of crates. Stay low, he whispered, his hand on her shoulder. Through a crack in the wall, Ellie saw Ray and another man, both armed, circling the mill. He's here, Ray muttered, and she's with him. Ellie's heart raced, but Jack was already moving, grabbing a rusty pipe from the floor. We need to get to my truck, he said, his voice calm but urgent. It's parked out back. Ellie nodded, her fear giving way to resolve. She wasn't helpless. She'd survived worse than this. But as they crept toward the back door, Jack's pipe slipped, clanging against a metal beam. The sound echoed, and Ray's head snapped toward it. Go, Jack hissed, shoving Ellie toward the door. They burst outside, sprinting through the overgrown lot, but Ray and his partner were close behind. Jack's truck, a beat-up Chevy, sat under a tarp. He yanked it off, revealing a vehicle that looked too clean for a drifter's, its chrome gleaming faintly. Ellie dove into the passenger seat as Jack started the engine. But Ray reached the truck, slamming his fist against the window. You can't run forever, Ray shouted, his knife scraping the glass. Jack floored it, the truck lurching forward, but Ray grabbed the door handle, hanging on as they sped toward the road. Ellie screamed, fumbling for something to fight with, and found a heavy flashlight under the seat. She swung it, smashing Ray's hand. He fell, cursing, as the truck roared onto the highway. They drove in silence, the mill fading in the rear view. Ellie's hand shook, the flashlight still clutched tight. That was too close, she said, her voice trembling. Jack's knuckles were white on the wheel, his face grim. I know, he said. I should have told you more. I thought I could handle it. His admission was raw, a crack in his armor, but it wasn't enough. Handle it. Ellie snapped. They're after me now, Jack. What's next? Before he could answer, headlights flared behind them. Another vehicle, closing fast. Jack's eyes flicked to the mirror, his voice tight. Hold on. He swerved onto a side road, but the pursuing car followed, its engine roaring. Ellie's stomach dropped as she realized they weren't safe yet, and Jack's secrets were about to cost them everything. The truck's engine roared as Jack swerved onto a narrow dirt road, the pursuing car's headlights glaring in the rearview mirror. Ellie gripped the flashlight, her heart pounding as branches scraped the Chevy's sides. Who are they? She shouted, her voice sharp over the rumble. Jack's eyes stayed fixed on the road, his jaw tight. Crane's men, he said, his tone clipped. They don't quit. The car behind them gained ground, its bumper nudging the truck's tailgate. Ellie braced herself, but Jack yanked the wheel, sending them skidding onto a paved street that led back toward Willow Creek. The pursuing car hesitated, then peeled off, its taillights vanishing into the night. Ellie exhaled, her hands trembling, but Jack's grim expression told her this wasn't over. They'll be back, he said, slowing the truck as they neared the town's outskirts. The Harvest Fair's lights glowed faintly ahead, a beacon of normalcy that felt worlds away. Ellie turned to him, her anger flaring. You keep saying you'll fix this, but we're still running. Who are you, Jack? Really? Her voice cracked, the weight of the night, Ray's knife, the chase, crashing down. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel, and for a moment, she thought he'd dodge again. But then he pulled the truck over, cutting the engine. All right, he said, his voice low, raw. No more half-truths. He faced her, his gray eyes steady but heavy with guilt. My name's Jack Harper. I'm not a drifter. I've got money. A lot of it. Made it in tech years ago, but I walked away from that life. Try to keep it quiet, help people without the spotlight. Crane was my partner once. I trusted him, and he used it to hurt people. When I cut ties, he swore he'd ruin me. He paused, rubbing the wrench keychain in his pocket, its metallic glint catching the dashboard light. I've been running ever since, testing people's kindness, seeing who's real. That's how I met you. Ellie stared, her mind reeling. The crisp bills, the clean truck, his cryptic knowledge, it all clicked. You're a millionaire? She whispered, disbelief mixing with betrayal. And you lied to me? Let me think you were some broke guy needing help. Her voice rose, hurt cutting through. I gave you my last $5, Jack. I trusted you. Jack's face fell, his shoulders slumping. I know, he said. I was wrong. I thought I could keep you out of this, protect you by staying quiet. But I screwed up, and you're paying for it. I'm sorry, Ellie. His apology was sincere, but Ellie's chest ached. She wanted to believe him, to hold on to the warmth she'd felt when he'd saved her. But his secrecy stung too deep. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. Mrs. Carter, her neighbor. Ellie, it's Tommy, the older woman's voice crackled. He's not breathing right. Ambulance is on its way, but you need to get to the hospital. Ellie's heart stopped, the world narrowing to her brother's face. I'm coming, she said, hanging up. She turned to Jack, her voice fierce. Drive. Now. Jack didn't hesitate, speeding toward Willow Creek's small hospital. The town blurred past. Main Street's banners, the fair's fading lights, and Ellie's mind raced. Tommy was her anchor, the reason she worked double shifts, the reason she'd given Jack that $5. If she lost him, she shoved the thought away, focusing on Jack's profile, his hands steady despite the chaos. This isn't over, she said, her voice low. But right now, I need you to get me to my brother. They reached the hospital, a squat brick building lit by harsh fluorescence. Ellie bolted inside, Jack close behind. Mrs. Carter met them in the waiting room, her face lined with worry. He's stable, she said, hugging Ellie. Lung infection. They're treating him now. Ellie sagged with relief, tears pricking her eyes. Jack stood back, his expression unreadable, but when Ellie glanced at him, he nodded, a silent promise to stay. Hours later, Ellie sat by Tommy's bedside, his hand warm in hers. He was asleep, an oxygen mask fogging with each breath. The doctor had warned of a long recovery and more bills. Ellie's savings were gone. The envelope Jack gave her barely a dent. She felt Jack's presence behind her, his shadow falling across the linoleum. He's tough, Jack said softly. Like his sister. Ellie didn't turn. Don't, she said, her voice flat. I can't do this right now. Jack nodded, stepping back, but he didn't leave. Instead, he sat in the hall, his head against the wall, the wrench keychain dangling from his fingers. Ellie watched him through the glass, her heart torn. He'd saved her life, but his lies had endangered it. Yet here he was, waiting, not pushing. Dawn broke, painting the hospital in soft gold. Ellie stepped into the hall, exhaustion heavy in her bones. Jack stood, his eyes searching hers. I'm going to end this, he said. Crane's men won't touch you or Tommy. I swear it. Ellie wanted to argue, to tell him to walk away, but his resolve stopped her. Ow, she asked instead. Jack's jaw tightened. I know where they're hiding. An old warehouse outside town. I'll go to them, settle this. Ellie's stomach twisted. Crane's men were dangerous, and Jack wasn't invincible. But before she could protest, a nurse rushed past, shouting about an emergency. In the chaos, Ellie's phone slipped from her pocket, unnoticed, as she followed the nurse to check on Tommy. When she returned, Jack was gone. Her phone lay on the chair, a text from an unknown number glowing on the screen. Stay with Tommy. I'll fix this. Jay. Panic surged. He'd gone after Crane alone. Ellie grabbed her jacket, her mind racing. She couldn't let him face this without her. Not after everything. She called Mrs. Carter to stay with Tommy, then ran to the hospital lot, spotting a cab. Take me to the old warehouse on Route 9, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. The warehouse loomed in the morning mist, its windows shattered, its walls tagged with faded graffiti. Ellie paid the driver and crept toward the building, her flashlight clutched like a lifeline. Inside, voices echoed, Jack's, sharp and defiant, and Ray's, laced with venom. You think you can walk away again? Ray snarled. Crane wants his cut, Harper, and your little girlfriend's gonna pay if you don't. Ellie's blood ran cold. She peered through a broken window, seeing Jack tied to a chair, blood trickling from a cut on his brow. Ray stood over him, a gun in hand, while another man guarded the door. Jack's eyes flicked toward the window, locking onto hers for a split second. He shook his head subtly. Stay back, but Ellie's resolve hardened. She wasn't helpless, and she wasn't losing him. She circled the warehouse, finding a loose board in the back. Slipping inside, she grabbed a metal rod from the floor, her hand steady despite her racing pulse. She crept toward the main room, where Ray was pacing. Last chance, Harper, he said. Where's the money you hid? Jack's laugh was bitter, defiant. Gone. Gave it to people who deserve it. Unlike you. Ray raised the gun, but Ellie acted, swinging the rod at the second man's knees. He crumpled, and she dove for cover as Ray spun, firing wildly. Jack broke free, tackling Ray, the gun skidding across the floor. Ellie grabbed it, her hands shaking but her aim steady. Enough, she shouted, her voice echoing. Ray froze, his scarred face twisting with rage, but he raised his hands. Jack stood, panting, his eyes on Ellie, pride, gratitude, and something deeper. You shouldn't be here, he said, but his voice was soft, almost awed. Ellie didn't lower the gun. Neither should you, she shot back. They tied Ray and his partner with old rope, calling the sheriff from Ellie's phone. As sirens wailed in the distance, Jack touched her arm. You saved me, he said. I don't deserve it. Ellie's throat tightened. You lied, she said, her voice breaking. But you came back. That's something. Jack nodded, his eyes glistening. Let me make it right, he said. For you, for Tommy. Ellie didn't answer, but she didn't pull away. Back in Willow Creek, the community rallied. The Harvest Fair's final day became a fundraiser for Tommy's treatment, with neighbors baking pies and donating what they could. Jack stayed, helping at the pie booth, his flannel swapped for a clean shirt, his wrench keychain tucked away. He'd paid off Tommy's hospital bills anonymously, but Ellie knew. She watched him laugh with Mrs. Carter, his guard down, and felt a shift in her heart. That evening, by the fair's Ferris wheel, Ellie found Jack. You didn't have to stay, she said. He smiled, real this time. Wanted to. You showed me what matters. He paused, then added, I love you, Ellie. No secrets this time. Ellie's breath caught, but she saw the man beneath the money, the one who'd fought for her. You've got a lot to make up for, she said, but her smile was soft. Start by buying me a coffee. They laughed, the fair's lights sparkling above, a promise of second chances. Challenges lay ahead, Tommy's recovery, Ellie's finances, but together they'd face them, rooted in Willow Creek's heart. Subscribe to the channel to see more soul-stirring stories.